Do our thoughts create our reality? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. Do our thoughts create our reality? The consensus is yes. In fact, that's the basis of Buddhism. So if we're to believe Buddha, then yeah, our thoughts create our reality. In fact, if we're to believe any of the great thinkers in human history, then we will say, yeah, our thoughts create our reality. But let's dig into it. Let's get into the process and let's think about it, right? Let's think about our thoughts creating the reality. Let's start with a philosophical thought exercise, and we just imagine a human being, in the reality, and we imagine all of the potential realities that can form and be manifested around that human being. It can be anything from being just a regular working person, it can be a slave, it can be a ruler of a country, it can be a great thinker, an athlete, a cook, whatever you can imagine that human being can be. And when we imagine that human being in a reality, we understand a few things off the bat. One, that body, whatever's in that body, is creating that reality, and those realities are always different. So we know that the human body is a vehicle for manifesting a reality, a bespoke reality, one that is unique to that particular human being. So we know that off the bat. And we can just look through the history books and see how many different types of human beings there are and how many different types of lives they're living. Even when people are being forced to conform to the same type of life, they're still not living the same life. They still vary to some degree. And when they have more freedom, then the spectrum of different lives that are lived are innumerable, essentially infinite. So off the bat, we know that a human body is a vehicle for creating a life, for creating a reality. So we want to dig deeper into it, and we want to say, okay, we can understand that the human body is creating this reality. And when we look at it, we can see that there's two primary means for the human body to create this reality. There's essentially an electromagnetic wave that's formed around them, that's interacting with the electromagnetic mesh that is the reality. And we can generally call those emotions and thoughts. The emotions are the magnetic field that's being created, and the thoughts that are being generated provide the electricity. The human body is this pulsating electromagnetic vehicle within the greater electromagnetic mesh that we call reality. You know, some traditions call it the Maya or life, or it doesn't really matter what you call it. Some people call it the Matrix, whatever. So we're seeing that this human body, it creates this energy field around it that's generally driven by emotional energy, thought energy, and at the core of it, soul energy. And then within that framework of it creating this and also being a bio antenna for the other energies that it's receiving from the seen and unseen world, that it is then also emanating out, other beings and other aspects of the reality itself respond in kind and in some proportion to the manifested energies that are coming out of that particular human body. So now when we dive into the inner workings of that particular human, and we go through the human systems, and each one of us, presumably, that's listening to this is human, and we have our own system. Once again, the maxim "know thyself" comes into play, so that once you know how your inners work, then you know how other people's internal mechanisms work. So you got to master yourself so you can understand others. So when we go internally, now that we know that that's from the outward side, from the external side, that's how the human life is manifested through this propagation of energies coming from the human itself. And we go deeper into the individual human, we know that most of the reality itself is happening up in here in the brain. Now, science has proven that the perception of the reality is all happening in here, in the seat of the mind, in the seat of the brain. All the information, everything that gets brought in through all of the 5 common senses and whatever other senses we have, all that information is turned into electric impulses that are then sent through the brain and sent into essentially like viewing areas of the brain for whatever you believe is inside of each one of us that's like observing all of this. You know, we can call it our soul, our point of consciousness, whatever you want to call it. What we're actually perceiving on the inside is the summation and the reorganization, almost like a TV screen, getting a TV signal and putting it on the screen. Our body's doing that, and we're basically seeing it inside our own brain of all the information coming in as we understand it to be. And then that's actually what we're calling reality. And we confirm that with other people or whatever, right? Science has proven that that's kind of how it operates. We're just getting a little show that's put together by our brain in here, and we're looking at it. So the idea is that, okay, that's what we're perceiving. Now the idea here is, can the thoughts that we're having in here create that? Okay, so the first thing to realize is that that makes it possible so that there can be, let me put it this way, it's important to clarify that you don't just create misperceptions in your mind and then say that you're creating your own reality. Like, to get to that point, we're understanding that if you make some adjustments to the way your brain is interpreting things through changing of thought patterns or whatever, and then you say, well, I'm creating my reality. Well, that's what clinicians would call delusion. Like, if you just warp your own perception, or you lie to yourself, or you just determine to misinterpret the reality on the perception level, you know, then you're being delusional. Now you're living in that reality. So in a way, you're creating your own reality, but you're creating a misperception more than that. But so the real question here is, like, if you're healthy and you're engaged in creating your own thought patterns, and you're honoring the thought patterns and neural pathways that you set up in your brain, and now you're consistently broadcasting that out to the external reality, and you're cleanly and properly perceiving the external reality coming back into your inner life, can you create that? Are your inner thoughts, are your thought patterns proportionally creating properly the reality, the corresponding reality? And then the continuation of that feedback loop of, okay, now I know that my thoughts are actually creating the external reality, and I'm getting the proper feedback back, and not just from me, in order to ensure that you're healthy about it, you need to check in with other people who are also healthy and have clear perception and go, hey, is this really happening? It doesn't have to be anything major. And they go, yeah, you probably apply the scientific method to it to make sure that everything's legit. So when we get into the thought patterns, we know that through meditation and through deep thinking, there's the same thing, that we can get down to our thought patterns, our neural pathways on all these various subjects. In fact, philosophy is one of the great tools to go in and do self-programming. Examine topics, examine areas, examine logical pathways, examine cross-hemisphere hemi-syncing of the brain hemispheres, which is exceptionally important. You're not a whole human being until you have both hemispheres of your brain synced up so that you're getting both logical and emotional informations and realities balancing. Until you do that, you're not whole. And on the thought side, thinking about that is what allows us to release into the trust of the information from the emotional side flowing into these logical constructs, these logical pathways. So how do the thoughts create the reality? Well, as we go into the brain and we self-guide it and we prepare the neural pathways for potential activity in the real world, we are essentially programming ourselves. And by programming ourselves at the thought level, we are preparing our behavior, we are preparing our full body broadcasting into the reality to communicate from our purest inner perspective to the external world what it is we truly value and what it is we're trying to catalyze in the world. So if in my deepest inner meditations and self-programming, I express to the world that I desire to work and be part of a team and create wealth and create a family, and these are things that I put into my mind, and then I live by it, and I'm in harmony with my own thoughts and body, and I go through the world communicating that, I will find more likely than not that those opportunities and those situations and those realities start to manifest. Oh, well, here's a job that fits that. Oh, here's a life path that fits that. Oh, now you've met somebody that also shares those values. Oh, now you have a family. Da 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 da. Because that's what I was thinking. As opposed to if I go back to the origin of those thoughts and I don't have those thoughts, and instead I have thoughts about I want to live a life of solitude, and I want to live on a mountaintop somewhere, and I want to really do solitary mountaintop things, and I don't want to have any human interaction. And I keep that thought process going in my mind, and I broadcast that to the world, and then my behavior follows my thoughts, and my emotions follow my thoughts because now my emotions are supporting my thoughts. Well, then as life unfolds, I'm going to be put on an emotional and mental pathway that leads me to solitude and living on a mountaintop and not being social, because that will be what is satisfying me, because I've set my brain by constructing these thought patterns to do that. And the thought patterns act as an antenna for the greater reality. The molecules that come in, it's straight up just an antenna. Like the thought patterns create the frequency. It's like if you were into an FM radio dial and you go, oh, I want to listen to 98.7. Well, if you don't listen to 98.7, you don't set it to 106.1. If But on 106.1, you're not going to get the same station as you do on 98.7. And that's literally what every single thought pattern that we're setting up is. We're just setting up the frequencies that we want to tune into, even if we're just exploring ones that we don't. But when we come to conscious decisions about certain thought patterns, then that becomes the frequency that we've set in our brain. Now, the brain that sets into motion all these other biological functions. Like when you set a brain frequency, when you set a thought pattern, your brain, it's so complex, it's ridiculous. It's an amazing computer. And the brain, like anything in nature, wants to be in homeostasis. It wants to come to a balancing act. So once it knows what its marching orders are, once you've told it what the thought patterns are, all of the internal chemicals of the body, which are numerous, are controlled. I forget the name of the area of the brain that controls the homeostasis, but there's a section of the brain that's in control of all the internal chemicals, all of the dopamines, the serotonins, all the different chemicals that put us in our mood, that create the atmosphere of our emotions, the things that ultimately guide us more than really anything else, like how we're feeling, right? And those are really cued off of what we said as our thought pattern. So if we told ourselves like, oh, we really want this thing, then our body, which is way more intelligent and providing way more analysis than we consciously render, will just tell us by shades of mood, and will release certain internal hormones or drugs to guide us in the directions of like what are really our deepest thought patterns are, for the most part, barring overriding moments in the situation. But over the long haul, with the trajectory, that will be the case. And so as we do that, our emotions will force us to make these decisions to get back in line with the thoughts that we've created. Like a simple one is, an extreme situation would be, let's say I was born as a slave in a totalitarian society, thousands of years ago, and I find myself being used as human labor. I've been strapped to an ox cart in lieu of an ox, and I'm pulling this ox cart, and all the power structure there's millions of other people they're using as like human slave labor, and they're telling everybody, think like a slave, you're a slave, be a slave, don't think anything else, because we want to use you to do this. And I've decided internally in my thought process, I'm a free person, and I want to live a free life, and I want to have my own house and make my own food, and I don't want to pull this ox cart anymore. Well, now, if I stated that thought process that I'm a free person, I don't want to do this anymore, I think this is stupid, I'm not a slave, I'm a free man, then all my corresponding emotions and my behavior are going to fall in line with what my thoughts are. And then it will make me feel terrible for these slave masters to coerce me into putting on the ox cart. And in that moment, they're enslaving me, but I'm no longer being a slave internally. And now my reality is at odds with their reality. Their thought is that they're trying to impose their thought about what I am on me. And in this moment, now my internal thoughts are in conflict with what they're attempting to overpower me with. And that is evidence that my thought creates my reality, because now my thoughts are that I'm free, even though my situation is that I'm not. And now my emotions are working in harmony with what my thoughts are. I'm a free man. And so any attempt to make me not free makes me feel bad. I don't like that. Now, conversely, if I had mentally given in to the slave owners and said, oh, yeah, I was born this way, I'm a slave, that would be it. Then my emotions would change. All my logical pathways, all my brain functioning would conform to that. Oh, well, okay, well, I'm a slave. Let's make the best of this. That's what we'll do. Since I'm a slave, then all my emotions, like, oh, well, I can handle this much abuse. It's all right if he cuts off my hand. It's all right if I don't have autonomy. Da 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 da. Like all these other things shut down in the brain pathway if I start accepting as my internal thoughts what they want me to be. They go, oh, well, you're a slave. Okay, I'm a slave. And then that sets it down a different path. All the different drugs in the brain are used for different reasons. All the different emotional states like conform to what they want. And because now my brain's like, well, if that's what you're thinking, then I'm here to support you. I'm going to do what you tell me to do. And if you're telling me I'm a slave and this is my life, then that's awesome. That's what, then we're a slave. Yay, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to adjust all our emotions to do that. Now, lots of organizations know that, by the way, and like lots of people over time have known that if you can trick people into thinking what they want you to think, then they've given up their autonomy. And you'll actually, the human body is like amazingly uh, amenable and malleable to any situation if the person inside determines that that's their reality. So going back to that situation where I'm going, well, no, I'm a free person. I don't know how I got in this situation, but I'm a free person, and this is I don't accept this, and I'm just going to look for my freedom and be free and keep my emotional state as such. Then that broadcasts it out, and when that happens, that's when the possibility of something happens where all of a sudden I've got this aux card on me, and I'm think this is stupid and miserable, and everybody around me knows it, but they're just trying to keep me down. And then that's what happens when all of a sudden a rock shows it, like the cart hits a rock, and then for some reason the yoke on the ox cart like falls off, and like the slave master guy gets distracted by the wheel, and he has to go fix it, and like he falls over in a ditch, and all of a sudden now I have a chance to make a run for it. Now I make a run for it because I'm feeling good, and I know that this is my opportunity because I'm a free man, and I've just been looking for my freedom. And I take off, and I go into the forest, and I go to another country, and I start my new life, and now I'm free. Exact same situation. If I'm thinking, oh, this is just my lot in life, I'm a slave, and I'm on this ox cart, and hits a rock, and the wheel falls off, and the slave owner goes over, and he falls in the ditch. I just sit there and go, oh, well, at least I got a break this time. At least I got a half hour of not pulling the cart. Man, I hope that guy's all right. I hope he gets back up here and keeps slaving me out. Hopefully get that wheel back on, because I really don't want to have to pull this cart with one less wheel. That would suck. Don't want to pull the cart with one less wheel. I'm just a slave. And then it's going to take 2 hours. Oh, well, the slave owner got mad and killed somebody because of at least he didn't kill me. And then he sees me give him a cross look, and he like kicks me in the face and knocks 2 of my teeth out. And I'm like, oh, well, at least I'm a slave. Guess that's just how it goes. And then we go. And the only difference in those situations was what was going on up here, like the thoughts creating the reality. The thoughts tell our bodies what to do, what to prepare for, what to look for, what frequencies to tune into, what to broadcast to the reality, how connected we are to the reality. If you believe we only have 5 senses, good for you. But once you start figuring out that we have more, and you go into your brain and you tell your brain, yeah, I've been getting all these extra informations. Like my dreams tell me things. I get premonitions. My third eye's open. I can see. I have senses that are not readily defined, but I've been living with them long enough that I know they're true. And I go in and I tell my brain, yes, brain, I affirm that I'm getting these other informations in. It doesn't really matter how, but I can confirm that I'm getting these other informations out in. And according to the scientific method, I can confirm with a high degree of correlation and cause and effect that they're accurate, that they're verifiable. They're verifiable outside of myself, that they're true. They have repeated, veritas. They're true. Okay, brain? And the brain's like, awesome, love it, glad you're here. And move forward in trust, creating a trusting relationship between me and my thoughts, me and my own body, that no one can get between. And then start to have fun with it, start to test it out. Well, if I think this, does that create a certain reality? Oh, lo and behold, it does. And, a lot of people, when they get into this situation, they start to think, well, you want to think really grandiose things like, oh, well, you know, control the world or like create an empire or get super duper rich, which is all, you know, it's all well and good. But start off with smaller things like creating my reality. Like, oh, well, if I can create my, you know, if my thoughts create my reality, well, I really want to see a concert. There's a concert I really want to see. Let's see if I can make that happen. Oh, made that happen. Well, don't discount that. That's a big deal. You manifest the thing, you know. Oh, I want to live somewhere. Oh, now you live that place. Well, that wouldn't happen if you didn't think it. And creating your own reality is not much more different than deciding to get in the car and go somewhere, or to not be a slave anymore, or you know, to go to pick a favorite food you like and eat that food. It doesn't have to be anything more difficult than that. And when you create this trusting bond with your own mind and your own thoughts, and you understand the power of the thoughts to set up the body as a manifesting vehicle, then you're a human being. Then your consciousness is making yoga, is making union with your biological, quantum, spiritual manifesting suit that we call human body. And then we can really, really set it up for prime activation in a bespoke life. And the limits of the human body are like still unknown. We keep doing more and more amazing things with them. People, it's amazing what people do with bodies. It's incredible. The stuff, it's absolutely astounding. It's nearly limitless. And conversely, when people who don't have a good relationship with their own thoughts and they let other things intercede, those people live incredibly tiny, small, horrible lives. And of course they're miserable at the end of it because they never took control of their lives. And where we take control of our lives is in our relationship with our own thought process, and being able to clearly see the correlation between what we're thinking that no one else can know. That's a personal responsibility and privilege, and seeing what the outcomes are. And it's really helpful to do it in clear environments. Don't do it in complex social situations at first. If you haven't established your relationship with yourself and your cause and effect, do it in highly controlled settings where you can know, simple, clean settings where you can know the effect of your thoughts coming back to you, and build up that momentum, that cycle. And obviously philosophy is one of the chief tools. It may be the primary tool on earth for the human experience to engage in this process. Like meditation is the description of the act of getting into it and to do it and to do other things. But philosophy is the inquiry. Philosophy puts us into a position where we can be intellectual. Philosophy is the middle ground, or intellectualism is the sort of the middle ground between the material body and the animal version of us and the spiritual creator God version of us. And the intellect, which does sit at the seat of the brain, is a place where in a very centered manner we can have those two realms meet, you know, and that's chiefly where our experience is occurring. And the chief interface with that is interaction with our own thoughts. The thoughts keep happening and the energy keeps flowing through us. And as we find out as we go through life, the energy that's flowing through us and flowing through our brains, it's flowing through the neural pathways that we've established. We inherit a bunch of neural pathways in there, especially like with all the basic functions that we've inherited from the animal evolution that humans have done. And now we're into the more spiritual side of the things. And the thoughts patterns that we instill and install in ourselves determine the nature of the experience that's unfolding. And so philosophy, one of its purposes is so that we can go through and have an open thought process to install some of these routines on questions and concepts and topics ranging from the small to the middle to the grandiose to the infinite, in a way that allows us to interconnect them, to allow for our life flow experience to occur, knowing that we have to set it up in our brain. It gives us autonomy over how we set up our brain. And it also gives us the capacity for it to be an evolutionary experience where we can be open-minded and allow for us to be wrong sometimes, or to change our minds, or to mature and go in and go, well, that was something I like to do in my 20s, and now that I'm in my 30s, like I need it to be, more long term and more mature and da 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 da. But the basic framework is in there. And then also sometimes we need to go in there and just completely pull out some things. Go, that did that for 20 years, didn't like the results of that. Got to get rid of that, right? But philosophy is the best way to approach the self-programming so that we can sort of safely explore questions and answers of what to put in our brain to live by. And then we follow wherever the flow of that goes. So, do our thoughts create our reality? It's up to you. I think they do. But that's why we're all living our lives, right? So we can figure out for ourselves and come to conclusions of ourselves, and learn to trust ourselves, and learn to interact with life as a learning lab and not a infinite torture chamber that some people think it is. So it's an infinite learning and loving lab. Um, well, thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you have fun.